All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Adam Odesser. I'm director of the Dr. Stuart Lesson's Israel Action Center at the Jewish Community Relations Council of Greater Washington. The JCRC serves as the public affairs and community relations arm of the organized Jewish community in our nation's capital, representing more than 100 organizations and synagogues throughout our region. A key component of our work is to empower, train, and mobilize our community to engage with and advocate for Israel. I'd like to thank all of you who are joining us here this morning for today's webinar, a week after the passing of the first law in a package of judicial reform bills proposed by the current government of Israel. Last week, the Israeli government passed a bill to prevent the Supreme Court of using the reasonableness standard in reviewing decisions made by the government or reviewing its political appointments. As I assume most of us on this call know, the package of judicial reform bills proposed by the current government has led to social unrest in Israel. Hundreds of thousands of Israelis have been demonstrating week after week for over 30 weeks now against the judicial reform bills, claiming that they will change the character of Israel as a democratic state. Stark opposition and warnings of the effect of passing these bills unilaterally have been voiced by the security establishment, legal experts, and economists. On the flip side, we have also seen supporters of judicial reforms, of these judicial reforms come out and demonstrate, voicing support for judicial changes. We have heard from Israeli lawmakers, from the coalition and opposition, and from some legal experts on the need of some changes within the Israeli judicial system. Despite the seriousness and the serious disagreements within the government and the polarization within Israeli society, the coalition moved ahead to approve unilaterally the first law of its judicial reform plan. To reflect on this decision, on the passing of this bill, and its effect on Israeli society and more, I'd like to welcome Professor Suzie Navot, Vice President of Research at the Israel Democracy Institute and an expert of constitutional law. Suzie, thank you so much for being here with us today. Suzie will speak for about 30 minutes, and then we will take questions from the audience. Please feel free to submit questions through the Q&A feature. Suzie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you all for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. Before we start with what's going on in Israel, let me give you just a very brief overview on things that you are all well aware of about Israel, but they have a big connection with what's going on. Let's start with a global overview. You know that the world is witnessing in recent years a trend of what we call a democratic erosion, a backsliding, along with the rise of populist leaders and populism. Nowadays, democracies do not die in one day. You do not see tanks on the streets. Democracies just wear out slowly and sometimes out of sight. And populist leaders that come into power, they change democracy by law. It's not the rule of law, it's the rule by law, meaning that they do not enact one law saying, okay, we are not a democracy anymore, but they actually pass many laws, one by one, small things, or laws that may seem at the beginning as small changes. But then you wake up one day in a completely different country. Israel and its constitutional structure actually is exposed to these dangers of populist leaders and of this trend of democratic erosion much more than any other country in the world. We have, as you well know, we have no one document known as the Constitution. We have several basic laws that have been granted by the Supreme Court constitutional status, but they're very easy to enact and very easy to amend. So it's not a real constitution, but it until today, it limits a little bit the power of the government and the power of the Knesset, because if a regular law enacted by the Knesset infringes upon my rights, then the Supreme Court of Israel may strike it down and declare it unconstitutional. But it is a very fragile constitution. And this is very problematic because in every country, and especially in the United States, that you will know, you have tools, you have mechanisms that limit the power of government and limit the power of political power, limit the political power. You decentralize political power. You have a rigid constitution protecting not only human rights, but the rules of the game. You have two houses of the legislative authority that are elected in different ways. And sometimes in many countries, also in the United States, you have also the right of veto given to a president on legislation. He may say, okay, I do not approve of this law and it will not pass. You have regional elections and federal structure. And in Europe, they have also, apart from all that, they have also the European Court of Human Rights. So if my rights are infringed in one of the countries, I may go to the European Court of Human Rights. But none of these tools exist in Israel. And this is very important to understand not what's going on now, but what we will see next. Because Israel is unique in many ways, in many wonderful ways. But Israel, in this way, we are the only country as defined as free, that we do not have any tool for the limitation of political power or decentralization of political power. Our Knesset has 120 members, which means that 61 is all you need to change everything. 61 in Israel, 61 members of the Knesset is absolute power. It's all you need to change the power of the court, the system of government, to become a non-democratic state, to delete all my human rights. In Israel, and only in Israel, 61 is actually the magic number. And the Supreme Court of Israel is actually the only branch that may limit this absolute power. And therefore, because it's the only branch that has the power to limit absolute power, therefore the Supreme Court, its powers and its independence, for 7 months now, they are under attack. And what is interesting to, I think it may be interesting for you as well, that we have always been like this because of the decision not to enact a constitution with the establishment of the state. For more than 70 years, the Knesset had always had this absolute power. So what's the difference? What happened now? And I think the difference is that for decades, the Knesset had never abused this power. Basic laws were always enacted and changed as chapters of the Constitution, meaning by a large majority. And nobody ever thought to change the rules of the game in the middle of the game or the basic principle of Israel, just like that, by a simple majority. But in recent years, something is changing, not only here, but also in the world. We have seen a change in the basic idea, I think you all know that there are things that are not done. It isn't done, like the British say. Political culture has changed. We're seeing a slowly fading of the word shame. Okay, we are seeing the rise of fake news, fake facts. We are seeing the ongoing normalization of things that were considered a few years ago unbearable. We are normalizing things that were considered unacceptable. For example, the comeback of a corrupted minister, a two-headed government, maybe in 1 week, a system that does not exist anywhere else in the world, or an indicted prime minister. And therefore, this new government, established since November, this new government says, yes, we can change Israel if we have enough hands in the Knesset, and we can change Israel into a completely different state. So now, when you understand, and for me, it's the most important thing, because the other things are just, things, small things that are happening. But once you understand that 61 means absolute power, it's much easier to understand what's going on. And on the 4th of January, we got the Minister of Justice presenting his plan for a judicial reform. And Adam, you said that there are many things that need to be reformed. I agree completely. But the government is not dealing with what needs to be reformed, what harms the citizens of Israel every day. The plan that they put forward in the Knesset had 5 issues, 5 themes that they need to take care of. The first is introducing this override clause that a simple majority of 61 will be able to enact any law that has been already declared unconstitutional by the court. And why a law is declared unconstitutional? Because it infringes upon my human rights in a way that is completely disproportionate. Just imagine, Adam, that this government may pass tomorrow no, because the Knesset is going to holiday, but may pass, a law saying that there will be no more demonstrations on Saturday. So usually I will go to the court and say this infringes upon my right of freedom of speech, of course. And the court would say, okay, this is an unconstitutional law. But the override would allow the Knesset to pass it again by a majority of 61. And here you have absolute power. This is the first part of the reform. The second one is the reasonable test, or that you just mentioned, and I will say something about it very soon. The third is removing the Supreme Court ability to strike down basic laws, meaning that if the Knesset decides to enact not a law, not a regular law, but a basic law, then the court will not be able to review it. And how do we enact basic laws? In the same way that we enact regular laws. Even by a majority of 2 versus 1, you can have a basic law, and I will enact a basic law called Basic Law Adam. It's for you, personal basic law, and there's no problem. But the court will not be able to review it. This is the third. And the fourth is of making legal advisors and other gatekeepers political appointees. And the fifth is changing the composition of the judicial selecting judges, meaning that the coalition will appoint judges. And it means not we want more conservative judges instead of liberal judges. No, we're not talking about liberal or conservative. The government wants coalition judges, which is something completely different, has nothing to do, I think, with conservative or liberal. And all these 5 projects are still on the table. And if you look only at them, what do they have in common? First of all, that the government wants this absolute power with no limitation. They do not want any limitation on the Knesset legislation, therefore an override, and the court will not be able to declare to judicial review basic laws. And they do not want any restrictions on government. And therefore, they eliminate the test of reasonableness. And when this project was presented, let me give you one example. Our Minister of Finance, Smotrich, he talked he gave an interview in the Facebook, and he was ready to get questions and questions from the people. And one of the questions was one lady asked, "Okay, if you pass this project, what kind of limit you will have on your power? Or what kind of protection will I have on my rights?" And the answer that we got to this question was, "You can count on us." And frankly, let me tell you that I do not want my human rights to depend on the goodwill of this government or the next government or the next government afterwards. And this is the main idea. This government wants absolute power. And the second thing that all these 5 issues or the proposals have in common is that almost every institution in Israel that is, there is a word that I cannot make the traduction, translate, it does not exist, is the word mamlachtiyut, but I will not use it. But everything that is in Israel currently professional, neutral, objective, and independent would be politicized. And this is exactly the protocol that we are seeing in Hungary and followed by the protocol of Poland. So this is something that is, I think that is very problematic, because those were the only things that were put on the table, nothing to do with the citizens, only with the power of the government. And last week, as you mentioned, Adam, the amendment that was passed is the Reasonableness Amendment. And this is the first part of this judicial reform. It's not a law. It's an amendment to a basic law, or an amendment to the chapters of our Constitution. And according to this amendment, the Supreme Court will not be able to overrule decisions made by the government and the ministers that are not reasonable. Now, this may seem, I think, unusual to an American audience. Israel, for example, has nothing written on how decisions should be taken by ministers or by the government. The standards for the civil service and the government have developed in case law by the Supreme Court. For example, the first question would be to a minister, did you have the authority for the decision you took? It's your authority, the Minister of Transportation, or is it something that has to do with the Minister of Finance? Whether you have the authority. The second question would be, did you follow the right procedure to take this decision? And the third question will be, how did you take this decision? How did you make this decision? Did you check the facts? Did you consider the relevant considerations? Did you balance the different aspects of the topic? And all of these questions are part of what we call a reasonable decision, meaning an accurate decision. The government in Israel and its members, they have a duty to act with reasonableness. And why a duty? Because the government is the public's trustee. The power they have and the money they control is not theirs. They did not bring it from the house, like our children said, it's mine from my house. They did not bring the money to the government. The money is ours, is of the people of Israel. So it's not just for the public. It's not meant to be just for the public that voted for the government, but for the welfare of the entire public. And therefore, the court is obligated to act reasonably and in the public interest. And the Supreme Court will intervene only in very, very extreme cases when the decisions are extremely unreasonable. Until now, the court has been very sparing in its use of this power. So now I think you understand that the reasonable test is only a tool. It's just a tool that enables the court to limit or to ensure that the government and the ministers take decisions that are appropriate, that are not irrational or not corrupted. And the justification of the government, what they told us, why do they need that? The justification was very simple. We, they say, the government, we do not want the Supreme Court to tell us what to do or to strike down our decision. We have been elected. Okay, so if once you are elected, does it mean absolute power? For me, absolute power is nothing, has nothing to do with democracy. So my answer to this argument is there are such a few cases, such a few decisions, less than 10, okay, just to give you an idea, in which the court stated that the government took a very unreasonable decision. So why do you need it? If in, let's say, 40 years you have 7 decisions, why do you need this amendment? What for? Because if you as a government, you want to take decisions in a professional manner and accurate decisions and with appropriate considerations, then you have nothing to fear from the test of reasonableness or from the standard of reasonableness. So this is a problem because only a government needs to be to let the reasonable test go. Only a government that perhaps wants to make extreme decisions, corrupt decisions, or arbitrary decisions. And I leave the question open because we do not know, but we know exactly what the intentions are. Because the government and its ministers, as from now, they will have a free hand, first of all, in appointing and firing all the officials and all the gatekeepers in Israel, such as the Attorney General, first of all, the State Attorney, the Police Commissioner, and appoint somebody that is loyal to the government to take care of the police, the IDF Chief of Staff, okay, the bank governor. And then after they fire them, they will be able to appoint to these positions any candidate they wish. And the question will be not if the person is appropriate or professional for the job, but whether he is loyal to the minister or to the government. The principle will be loyalty. And this is something that we have seen all over the countries that have passed through these democratic erosions and are not democracies anymore. Somebody is following the Polish protocol or the Hungarian protocol. And I think this is the story in a nutshell. The government, our government, wants unlimited power. And to be able to do so, they need to override the Supreme Court to create a form of immunity for itself. And Adam, what I like when you presented the case, you talked a little bit about the procedure by which this amendment was passed. I don't know if you follow it. We follow it in television, and we witnessed it. We actually witnessed a procedure that was rapid, aggressive. I'm sorry to say that, but also very unpolite. And that demonstrated that there was no intention whatsoever to listen to no one, not to those who appeared before the Knesset Commission, no willingness for discussion or compromise with members of the opposition. And I was part of these discussions, but there was no real will to do so. No, they did not want to make any changes in the wording of the bill to make it a little bit perhaps possible to pass. This government was not, I think it was simply not prepared to listen, not to the hundreds of thousands that you mentioned that protest, not to the high tech and not to the lead of the business, and not to the professors of economy, not to the doctors and to the scientists, jurists, lawyers, heads of universities, and not to the head of the security services, past and present, not to the IDF senior officers and those who volunteer to all the IDF units. None of this were of any interest to the government. Now, nobody actually prevented from passing this law that changed so dramatically the Israeli system of government. And again, for me, what is the most important thing is to look at the whole picture, because that is how democracies die. Not just one piece in the puzzle. Reasonableness is just one detail, a small detail. The overall plan is much more comprehensive, and you are most than welcome to read about it. There are more than 200 bills prepared, and some of them already tabled, that are part of this judicial overhaul. They deal with the civil service, with all the gatekeepers, with the free media, with the status of women, and with the independence of the academia, and of course, with the courts. Okay, we are indeed, I think, following this protocol. The democratic erosion in Israel, unfortunately, is not a threat anymore. It is a reality. And now this amendment to a basic law is going to the Supreme Court. So let me tell you something about the Supreme Court and this amendment. The amendment, I think we had about 7 petitions filed before the Supreme Court, and it will hear the case on the 12th of September. And the decision that was rendered, I think, 10 minutes before we started, is that the case will be heard before all the justices of the Supreme Court together, 15. For us in Israel, this is most unusual. We do not do that. We do not have one court that sits all together. Usually the panels of judges are 3, and when it's a constitutional case, you have 9, 7 or 9, and the utmost is 11. We had, I think, 2 cases of 13. But now they decided that the case will be heard before 15 justices of the Supreme Court, which is, I think, very, very, it's a very interesting decision. I think it has to do with the legitimacy that the court wants to give to this case. And I think the importance they give to the case, because I think it's one of the most important cases in Israel since its establishment, is not the most important at all. Now, how can the court interfere in a basic law if this is a chapter of the Constitution? Now, the whole idea for this procedure is that the Knesset does not have unlimited power to pass and to amend basic laws. First of all, because basic laws are passed in the same way with the same procedure as you pass a regular law. Okay, imagine just that you can change America's constitution by a simple law. Okay? The process to change a constitution, especially in the United States, which is the strongest constitution in the world, is very, very difficult. Okay, but in Israel, it's as easy as to pass a law. And therefore, in a democracy, we do not have unlimited power. And the Supreme Court has said so many times. And the principle that has been set since the first days of the state is that the Knesset cannot infringe upon or severely infringe or revoke the basic values of the state of Israel. Israel is a Jewish and democratic state, and no simple majority can change it. Not the idea that Israel is a Jewish state, and not the idea that Israel is a democratic state. These are the values of the Declaration of Independence. And if the Knesset enacts a basic law that actually infringes upon these basic values, then the Supreme Court may intervene and even strike down the legislation. It has never been done in Israel. But the Supreme Court has this, I would call it an unconventional weapon to do so. And in a case, I will quote you something in a moment, in a case from 3 years ago, the Supreme Court President Esther Hayut is the president of the Supreme Court. She ruled in a case dealing with the Speaker of the Knesset, and I will quote you, when there is an unprecedented infringement of the rule of law, then unprecedented remedies are called for. And I think this is a very good quote for the case that we are supposed to hear. This is an unprecedented matter. We are dealing with a law that actually changed the idea of the rule of law. The rule of law, I am obligated by it, but I think the government not, and therefore is something that the court has to deal with. What will happen if the court strikes down this amendment? I do not know, but I don't see any other possibility than to comply and to accept the decision. And I am sure for the moment, I hope not to be wrong, I am sure that this is the basic principle of a rule of law, and a government that will not accept a court's decision, then I should ask why a citizen should accept it. So for the moment, I do not see a constitutional crisis more than or bigger than the one that you already have, but we will see, and perhaps we'll talk in the future on what is up. So I think I have been terribly pessimistic until now, and I have to finish with a very optimistic overview, otherwise it will not be fair, because I am a very optimistic person, and I am much more optimistic now than I was 7 months ago. And I will tell you something personal, Adam, because I see you and I don't see my audience, so I'll talk to you. If a week after the reform was presented in the Knesset, you would have come to me and told me, Suzie, the reform is going to be cancelled, okay? I would have been very pleased. For me, it would have been all we needed. All you need is love. Well, all you need is to take it from the table. Today, 7 months afterwards, is not enough for me. Today, we know something that we did not know before. We, as the citizens of Israel, we know the unbearable lightness, if I may use these words, of changing our country. How easy and how deep is the threat of changing the character of Israel. So today, moving aside the reform and leaving everything as is not enough. We need a new social contract. We need something that will not allow for this to happen in this government, in the next one, and in the next afterwards. We need to limit the power of government, to entrench our rights, to deal with the separation of power, and yes, to arrange the powers and limit the powers of the Supreme Court as well. I was very pessimistic at the beginning because I knew exactly how easy it is to pass these laws by a simple majority. But nowadays, I am much more optimistic because of what's going on in Israel. Because we have learned that Israel has a democratic spirit that was not there, neither in Poland nor in Hungary. In 7 months, the large majority of the people of Israel have learned what democracy really means. And we in IDI, in the Israeli Democracy Center, where I serve as the vice president, we had a special role in this educational moment. Slowly but stubbornly, the liberal democratic group appeared on the streets. We never knew it existed. And its goal is to save Israel's democracy. It moved hundreds of thousands of Israelis that took to the streets on Saturday night to defend the Supreme Court, to defend Israel democracy. And this, spirit is ready to burst out when democracy is threatened. We did not know it. We discovered it in the last month. And I hope this spirit is here to stay. It's also all over the world. You have the unacceptable group that is making this protest exactly the same, mirroring in several cities around the world. It turns out that there is a big, huge ideological sector in Israel that have shared values with you. And for me, there is no greater source of optimism. And the opportunities are also very clear for me, and also a source for a big smile, I think, because we are perhaps in a constituent moment. And this moment is a shift, and we have to work to turn this crisis into an opportunity, not only for dialogue, and not only for reaching consensus if somebody really wants it, but also for completing the constitution, and at least give Israel a constitutional framework to define the rules of the game and to entrench the protection of our basic rights. So I think these are very difficult times for us, but we will overcome. And we will overcome because also because of you. And for me personally, I don't know if you share that, but this is my opinion. For me, the values of the State of Israel and the fight for them is not only a fight of Israelis, it is a struggle of us all as Jews. And you also have a role. What is happening here has never happened before. People are fighting for democracy and freedom. And on their side, there's the Jewish people around the world. And it's a great help to know, first of all, that you care. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. And to know that you are with us. This is a great support. We need it. And it's also a huge injection, although injection is not so nice, but it's a huge injection of optimism for our future. This is everyone's homeland. And therefore, a good reason for this challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzie, for really that extensive overview of the issues, not only of the reasonableness clause, but everything regarding the judicial reforms. There are many questions coming in through the Q&A, and I thank everyone for submitting them, and we'll try to get to as many as possible. I want to kind of touch a little bit on, specifically on the reasonableness law that came into law last week. Can you perhaps maybe give us some examples of when the Supreme Court actually struck down government's actions on the basis of, being unreasonableness?
I will give you two. One that has to do with a particular minister, and I think that is one of the reasons that the reasonable test was passed as the first. The court actually stated that Prime Minister Rabin has to fire a minister from his cabinet, from his government, the moment that the minister was indicted for corruption, for bribery. The name of the minister in 1993 was Aryeh Deri. And he has been not only indicted, he has been convicted, he served in prison, he came back, he was elected. And the court actually a few months ago said he cannot serve as a minister because he was indicted again. And he actually promised during his plea bargain, that he would not return to politics, but he did the day after. So the court actually said it's extremely unreasonable for a person to serve as minister and to hold, the power to take the money and everything. So this is one of the cases. I think they are unique in the world from what I've checked, because in no other democratic country, I don't know, from the countries that I checked, if a minister is being investigated, he resigns the next morning, or he's called by the party and given perhaps a glass of brandy, and they ask to step down. But in Israel, he said, okay, I can stay. My prime minister needs me in order to form a coalition, and therefore I will not resign. And that was the case of Derry, and there were two cases similar. The last one, which has to do with something completely different, is a decision made just last year. When we had this government by Lapid and Bennett, the Minister of Finance was Lieberman. And Lieberman, the first thing he wanted to do is to take care of the ultra-Orthodox. So he said, okay, we will, first of all, in order to make them go to work, if they don't serve in the army, we will suspend the subsidies for the daycare of their children. The children of the college students usually go to daycare, and the government gives them subsidies, I don't know the word, to make them easier because they do not actually earn any money. And the Minister of Finance actually suspended it. And Orthodox families went to the court. Yes, they went to the court because they were a minority then. And they said, okay, we were, put in a situation where we did not get any advance warning, and they did not give us a chance to make other arrangements. This is extremely unreasonable. And the court actually accepted the argument. So here you have two completely different, I think, examples of one of these cases that the court actually intervened when something is extremely unreasonable. But the court never
intervened. Action that the court takes lightly or often. That's the Supreme Court uses often.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. So I'm looking at the question. I'm trying to connect several together. I mentioned in my opening, and you spoke a little bit about, changes are needed. Some changes are needed within the judicial system. Can you maybe talk a little bit about those? What changes do you see are needed within the Israeli judicial system? Whether they're related or not related to the ones that are proposed.
Well, then first of all, we actually need to stabilize to make stable, okay, our checks and balances. We need one basic law that is missing. It is basic law, the legislature, that actually speaks about the power for judicial review, the majority of judges needed in order to declare a law that is unconstitutional, that deals with the power of the court, that deals with how a basic law should be enacted by a majority of 80, for example. So if a majority of 80 enact a basic law, then the court, of course, does not have, it's not the power of the majority anymore. It's not majority rules. You are not abusing this power. So this is the first thing that needs to be done. But actually, this is a law that limits power. So I do not see, for the moment, the government dealing with it. The second thing is, of course, we do not have enough judges. Israel is a country that loves litigation. We love to go to court. And we do not have for the moment, we have, I think, 100 judges missing we have chairs, but we do not have judges. The procedures in Israel are terrible. We have to wait in order to get a decision, a verdict in a criminal case for years. Take, for example, the case of Benjamin Netanyahu. He was indicted in January 2020. I do not have to remind you that tomorrow is 1st of August, 2023. We are still hearing the prosecution witnesses. We haven't heard the accused and the defense. We are still in the magistrate court, and it may take years until we get, I think, a decision by the magistrate court, and then by the district court, and then an appeal to the Supreme Court. It's another 2, 3, 4 years. this is not justice for me. Somebody needs to take this into consideration. We have to rethink the procedures in criminal and civil cases as well. Why they should take more than, let's say, a few months to get an indictment, a decision, a plea bargain, a verdict. Why? So this is another thing that needs to be done. We need, of course, a new Court of Appeals. We have one Supreme Court that is the Court of Appeals from the district courts in civil and criminal cases, and the same judges, they sit as the Supreme Court of Justice. They have 14,000 cases a year. Now, this is not human. Something needs to be done. They've been talking for 10 years to make another Supreme Court of Appeals. And then perhaps a constitutional court or a court of the Supreme Court of Justice apart. But nobody's actually lifting the glove to that, and nobody's taking care of these things that are needed, I think, for the people, not for the government. Nothing to do with power.
Do you think having a constitution and perhaps a constitutional court, with the Constitution would, help, close those gaps?
I don't have any problem with that. I might be in a minority because my colleagues think that a constitutional court is something wrong. But I say, if we have a constitution, then perhaps we need a constitutional court like in Europe, a constitutional court that is elected also by the politicians, meaning that they want to have a say on that because it's a constitutional court. It deals with the Constitution. But you cannot have a constitutional court without a constitution. This is something unheard of. So you have to decide first. Let's complete the Constitution. I hope that for the 75th year of the anniversary of Israel, we might have, but I was wrong. So I'm Israeli, but I am a very bad prophet, I think. And I will not take my chances anymore. But for me, it's not a forbidden word, a constitutional court. If you complete the Constitution and you vote a Constitution, you have a referendum over a Constitution in Israel, then perhaps a constitutional court may actually solve the rifts in the society. You have politicians will appoint the judges for this constitutional court that deals with the constitutional issues.
Thank you. I'm also, we've been talking here a little bit about, the impacts also of what these, the judicial reforms may have. Can you perhaps maybe talk a little bit about what impacts they may have on different minority groups, whether it's women, whether it's LGBTQ groups, whether it's, the Arab community? What impact could these reforms have on different groups in Israeli society?
I think it's clear. First of all, women are already under attack. Already, there was a branch that took care in the government that took care of women representation, etc. It's been dissolved. We are seeing bills that actually propose to pass powers that are given today to the district court and to pass them to the rabbinical court. We are seeing more and more separation in the academia, in the buses. And this is something new because the Supreme Court said it's forbidden. It's equal, but separate is not equal. And I am not the one to quote this phrase to Americans. All right. So, but we're seeing it very slowly. There are no general directors of ministers, women anymore. I think we had one out of 35. Look at the composition of the government and please count how many women you have. It's everywhere. We will see what comes out of the elections for the municipalities. But when you have an ultra-Orthodox and extremist right government, women and minorities are the first to suffer. We have one minister that is completely against the LQTB. I don't know the name of. You said it.
LGBTQ community.
Okay, so I completely against, and we may see it in the educational programs as well. minorities, of course. We are seeing, and for me, this is something very problematic. And like we say in tennis, you perhaps say in soccer and football, the eyes on the ball. Minor changes to election law. This is something that we are actually monitoring what has happened in other declining democracies. We've seen it in Poland and in Hungary. Changes in elections means that perhaps the elections that we knew, we will not see them anymore. For example, there are bills proposing that if you are not loyal to the country, you cannot be part of the Knesset, meaning we will disqualify the Arab country, with the Arab members, disqualified from taking part in election. This is 25% of the population in Israel. Just think about it. And there are minor changes they want to take from the elections committee. There's a judge at the head of the elections committee, and they said, no, we do not want a judge anymore. We want the Speaker of the Knesset. So you change these neutral, objective professionals out, and you put instead politicians to take care of elections. Just imagine.
Can you talk a little bit about that committee? You know, what it, how judges are elected today, and you know, what changes does do they want to make through these legal reforms?
I think it's a little. We have a commission that is comprised of 9 members, and it's very easy actually to remember that. For me, it's 2, 2, 2, 3. Okay, when you go 2, 2, 2, 3, you will remember it. We have 2 ministers, meaning that 2 members representing the government. We have 2 members of the Knesset representing the Knesset. One is usually from the opposition and one is from the coalition. We have 2 members of the Israeli bar, which represents the professional aspect. And we have 3 members of the Supreme Court, 3 judges. It's a multi-branch commission, which is, for me, not bad. And if it's not really broken, we do not need to fix it. And the good thing this committee has, it's the balancing of the powers. Because in order to elect a Supreme Court judge, you need 7 out of 9. The coalition has 3 members, 2 ministers and 1 member of the Knesset from the coalition. So the government has at least 3. So if the judges want to elect somebody that the government does not want, it will never pass because they need 7. And 3 out of 9 give the other party 6. So it cannot. And if the coalition wants to elect somebody that is a coalition judge, the judges will stand by. They have also 3. So you have a 3 persons veto on both sides. And when you have a veto for both of the sides, then you need to compromise. And Israel is a country that needs to compromise. You need that because of the different faces on the reefs and the problems of this multicultural society. So a compromise is good. And for the moment, the compromises have been very good. Former Minister of Justice Ayelet Shaked, she said, I actually managed to elect 4 conservative judges to the Supreme Court. And for me, it's fine. It's completely fine. She played by the rules. And conservative versus liberal is okay. It's good to have some of this and some of this, as long as I think the basic values of a liberal society are still there. For the moment, the Supreme Court comprises 8 members that are considered liberal and 7 that are considered conservative. But these are stickers that you put on the forehead of each and every one, and I think they do them wrong, because some of them are very activist in one case and conservatives in others. And therefore, it's very interesting to see what the 15 will do with this basic law. Will they follow this, this arrangement that this separation that I just did? But when you ask the Minister of Justice, Yariv Levin, how many conservative judges you have in the court? He says, one. Okay, so something is wrong here. Perhaps we have only one that is not conservative, is a coalition judge, because we know what a conservative judge is, and I'm sure that you know. So this is the composition today. What they want to do is, there are many, many models that they're talking about, but they want to put the weight on, of course, on the political aspect, and let go the professionals. They don't need them. Although this is a professional court, the judges have to hear criminal cases and civil cases. They have to understand in torts and in taxes and in criminal law and of course everything else. So why let go the professionals? We need them, but for the moment, we do not have one model that is being put forward. We just have the idea. We want to take over this commission. That's it.
Thank you, Suzie. We're reaching the top of the hour. I want to kind of end, take some of the questions here and kind of add it together. And kind of, I wrote down a question earlier, and I see several, people asking the same question here. So I wanted to ask your view. I'll start by, first, is Israel's democracy under threat? Do you feel it's under threat? And I'll want to add to it because, our viewers know that not only do we love Israel, and we care about Israel and Israel's success, and we're tied to it. And it also at times, it dominates American political discussion here and the way we advocate for Israel and talk to our elected officials here. So I believe your input here, our input in the U.S. by the Jewish community is valuable and important. But so one is Israel's democracy under threat, but also how would you guide us, the American Jewish community, to approach this government and to help preserve Israel as a strong democracy?
Well, this is I think one question that I cannot answer. But there's one thing, because I cannot tell you what to do and how to do. I think it's for each and every one of you. We are really in the struggle over the character of Israel. It's perhaps our war of independence, a second one, that will decide to what extent Israel remains a liberal democracy that you can be proud of, that you can stand up for, that your children will feel a connection to, that a liberal democracy that shares the values of the United States, and the United States will continue to support in many ways, where you will feel, and you will feel welcome regardless of your religious practices, which we are seeing now threatened as well. So once you understand that this fight is not only mine, because I'm an Israeli living here, and and I work very hard in order to influence what I can, it's also yours. Then I'm sure you will find yourself a role. You have to, because you can influence and you can be a part of Israel. This is the fight for the Jewish state. And I think each and every one of you will find a way to be part of it. You decide how, when, and what is the method to do that. I'm sorry, but I cannot tell you. I think it's not my role.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you understand that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that answer. And thank you, Suzie. We know that many in the Jewish community here in the DC area and throughout the US we will definitely continue to follow closely over the next few months. And perhaps, we will need to have you, join us once again here, pending on the developments. So thank you again for a really interesting and informative discussion.
Thank you. I'm here for you whenever you need me. And if there are questions that still needed to be answered, then you will pass them my mail and I will answer, I think perhaps privately to each and everyone. If there's something that I can be of an assistance to you, don't hesitate. Good luck to all of us. Keep well.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you, Adam, for having us.
Yeah, thank you. And again, to all our viewers and listeners, thank you, for joining us here today. And, I would If you would like to stay in touch or find more information about the JCRC of Greater Washington, you can also visit our website at jcouncil.org. And in the meantime, again, thank you, Suzie. To all of you, stay safe. Enjoy the rest of your day.